Right. Hi, everybody. I'm Jonathan Farrell with the Two Mortgage Guys, and this is the Two Mortgage Guys podcast. Today we have Michael Camp. Thank you for joining us today, Michael. I really appreciate the one thing I'm really excited to talk to you about is investing in real estate. I know
Absolutely.
that you're a prolific investor and kind of have a little bit of a background in that.
I've had a little bit of success with it.
Yeah. Well, so go ahead and kind of tell us like what your background in investing is in real estate in general is, and we'll kind of go from there.
So I started out kind of similar to yourself in 2003 to 2007 doing mortgages. Back then, it was definitely a lot easier. Pretty much everybody was stated income, verified assets.
You're breathing.
Things, you're breathing.
You get a loan.
Things hit the fan there in 2007, and kind of scrambled. Didn't know what to do. Didn't know where I'd end up. Towards the end of 2007 and during 2008, I was selling the bank-owned properties, selling around 30 houses a month. What that allowed me to do is know where the buyers were at, what loan programs were available, establish construction crews to rehab these properties.
Right.
Well, the banks were a pain in the butt to deal with.
Yeah.
We spent more time trying to collect on construction money from the banks than just about anything else, than actually physically selling the houses.
Right.
And then before you know it, the banks owe you $300,000 out on construction repairs that you've done for their properties.
Right.
And you feel like you're broke, even though you're doing pretty well.
You're doing pretty good, right?
Because it's always that cash flow issue.
Right.
So
you gotta send in the collectors to go collect in on the debt.
It was constant, just hounding them, because they would always stretch you out 30 days.
Right.
But 30 days a lot of times turned into 45, 60 days.
Right.
So it was difficult, and the banks in general, I think, are tough to deal with.
Yeah.
So opportunities started coming along to flip properties. Selling the bank owns, we were ready to go.
Yeah.
Flipping properties, we knew where the buyers were at, what loans were available. We had crews that would go in and rehab them right away.
Yeah.
2008 to 2010 would consistently flip 30 houses a year. And it was like shooting fish in a barrel, whether you were buying something off the MLS that the bank put on the market on Monday at $300,000, you offer them $300,000 as is, and you close on it. And I remember one so vividly, like all we did was replace some door handles and add sod to the property, touch up some paint, put it back on the market for $404,000.
Right.
Just nobody knew what anything was worth. You go to trustee sale and you'd be there to buy some houses, and if somebody bought the house in front of you, you say, "Oh, that's fine. I'll just get the next one."
Right.
And it's just
they're just lining up like crazy, basically.
It was good. Well, there was no competition.
Right.
Nobody knew what anything was worth, and investors were still a little gun shy to get in the market.
Right.
During that time as well, I had a partner at the time, and I probably had, when things all went to the wayside, I probably had $75,000 to my name. When everything was said and done post 2007, we were making great money. My first house was $825,000.
Yeah.
But we're spending it as fast as
we
were making it. And it was a big lesson for me as well. I feel like everybody at a young age, they kind of need something to slap them in the face, to ground them.
Right.
And hopefully you don't make that same mistake again. Hopefully you remember it and it changes you. But so I started buying rental properties with a partner as well. A lot of these properties that we were buying were $60,000 to $80,000 at the most. And we didn't have a lot of money. We were able to buy them cash, and do one at a time.
Right.
Buy it cash, fix it up, get a renter in place. So that $75,000 property, we're now all in with rehab, $85,000. And fortunately, we had friends, family, anybody that we knew that had a little bit of retirement. Their retirement account was hurting as well. They weren't earning any money on it. So we would get the property rehabbed, get the tenant in place paying $1,000 a month. We would take out a hard money loan at 8% interest. So our new payment's $666 a month.
Right.
And we just kept doing that. And before we knew it, we had 34 rental properties as well. So things just, with staying focused and keep doing the same thing,
Right.
things just really, really scaled and grew over time.
Well, I think the one thing that you said too, because it wasn't like you just amassed 34 rental properties within a span of with immediately
one at a time.
It was one at a time, and I kind of feel like that's the biggest thing. Like when people look at investing, they always see the end goal, right? The end goal is I'm going to have 34 rental properties, but they don't see the different steps that it took to get you there, right? So, you're doing it one at a time. You're being patient about it, and I think that really what most people are lacking in the investment standpoint is patience.
Yeah.
So just like you said, one at a time, that turned into 34 rental properties. So, I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of people need to kind of touch up on.
And you can do it with little or no money out of pocket, but it's a lot easier to do that when you have a successful track record.
Right. Well, and again, to your story, when you're telling me that, I mean, from that standpoint, it's just a matter of like, look at what you've been able to do. It's now 2020, right? You started in
2020, and we're approaching 300 houses that we've bought, rehabbed, and sold over the years.
Yeah, and the one thing that we were talking about too, because I think you told me this, buying and flipping properties now is a heck of a lot harder than it was back then.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So can you kind of touch on that a little bit? Because I do get asked that question a lot. Like, hey, if I wanted to flip houses, what's the best way to go about doing that? And
I have definitely shifted, won the strategy on acquiring properties, and shifted where I want my business to go as well. So about 2012-ish, things became more difficult in acquiring the properties. I think 2012 to 14 or 15, a lot of my other friends that were flipping properties stopped doing it and went into either other industries or went back to their original businesses. What kept me busy through that time period, even though I'm a real estate broker, I would tell agents if they found a property for me, they can represent me when I buy it, they could represent me when I sell it. So that kept deals coming in through that time period, but things definitely just started to dramatically slow down.
right.
The last 2 years, I've only been able to flip 12 houses a year.
Yeah.
And we are paying 3 to 4 times as much for the properties.
Right.
The contractors are all busier.
Well, there's a lot of construction going on right now too. So
Yep, they're all back to work.
Yeah.
Back busy. There's a lot of people that are rehabbing their houses, so they're just the general public is using them as well.
Right.
We needed to completely shift from finding anything on the MLS or at trustee sale to finding them before it hits the market.
Right.
So I brought in a guy full time. All he does is hammer the phones. So out of state owners that have equity in the property, as soon as somebody's filing for probate, as soon as somebody files for divorce, as soon as notice of default gets filed on a property, and then when they fall over a year behind on property taxes, we're reaching out to them. We're trying to buy their property. We're touching them at least 3 or 4 times through phone call, and we are mailing to them as well.
Right. They're getting hit every which way.
They're getting hit every which way. And if I'm in the neighborhood, the same system that we use in-house, the app on my phone shows me the properties. There's notes on the properties of when we talk to them. And if I'm in the neighborhood working on one of our other properties, I'm going over to the property, knocking on the door and talking to them.
Right.
So even with all that,
you're still getting 12
still
properties.
Only getting 1 a month.
Right.
And 1 a month at this point where we're scaled up to,
right.
It pretty much just keeps the lights on.
Right.
We're not putting money in savings at 1 a month.
Right.
We are just plugging away with that business.
Right.
Like I was saying, if I wasn't doing it before, I probably still wouldn't be doing it now. But
You have a track record of doing it, and
yeah, and you always want to. I have crews that have worked with me for over 10 years now. You always
Right.
want to. I feel a responsibility to keep them busy. I feel a responsibility to keep the guys and gals in my office busy.
right.
And it's still working. You're not losing any money. So
Right.
let's keep doing it because the market's constantly changing and ebb and flowing
Right.
up and down.
Well, and that's good too, because especially for somebody who's, I mean, the market's going strong right now. It's not like
It is.
it's dying down anytime soon. Even a lot of like my clients are getting pre-approved and then almost immediately getting into escrow. It's just been that type of market recently. So, again, too, it's a different setting, from like what you said in 2008, 2010. But I know that there still is different possibilities out there. But think of the amount of work that you guys are doing just to get those 12. So it's not like it's
There's still opportunities out there.
Yeah.
There definitely is. And I don't know, maybe it's because I feel like I was spoiled from 8 to 10 that it was really easy that
Right.
maybe I think the way that I do about it now. But I'm definitely focusing more on my real estate company,
Right.
focusing more on another business that I have and dumping money into those businesses
Right.
and trying to expand them. Where in
Diversify
the
income
early
stream.
in the earlier years, I thought that flipping was
Right.
easier, and I truly enjoyed flipping properties. I am not passionate about finding that next listing.
Yeah.
I am not truly passionate about finding that next home for that buyer.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, I enjoy finding homes for friends and family members and buyers, but I'm such an analytical person that, to me, if it makes sense on paper, it makes sense. If the numbers make sense, let's do the deal.
Right.
I don't share that same, the same passion that first-time home buyers are out looking at properties, and maybe I've become a little numb to it from doing it so much.
Right.
But I don't share that same passion in the way that they do, or the way that I see other real estate agents.
Well, just kind of going back to what you're saying, it's not just like the world of real estate isn't just buying and listing houses.
A lot of different ways.
There's so
to make
many
money
different
in real estate.
aspects to it, right? So, you have the investment standpoint, you have the flipping standpoint, you have rentals, you have, buying and selling for people. There's so many different aspects to it, and
There is.
the opportunity's there,
Mm-hmm.
right? So again, something that works for you might not be somebody else's cup of tea, but that doesn't mean that you're wrong and the other person's not.
And that's what's great about real estate.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of options.
Right.
I am passionate about finding the next deal.
Yeah.
I am passionate about taking something that's an eyesore for the neighborhood, fixing it up, making it nice, and having typically first-time home buyers move into the property
Right.
that don't have $30,000 or $40,000 to dump in the property, but they can afford the payment and they do want a nice place to live.
Exactly.
So it's with real estate, it is one of the great things that
Yeah.
there's so many options.
And that's so one of the things that we talk about a lot in our podcast is more along the lines of comfortability, right? Like if you're comfortable, like people always say like, okay, like when is a good time? The best time is now,
I agree.
regardless of whether interest rates are 3.5% or 4%, because we're going to qualify you on the basis of comfortability, right?
Mhm.
So if you're comfortable with the $2,500 a month payment now, let's get you into the $2,500 a month payment, and that could be buying your house where now you might be paying a little bit more on the monthly side, but then you're not having to do $20,000, $30,000 in repairs to get the house the way that you want it.
Yeah.
So, again, from that standpoint, any time is as good a time to get into something.
There's no reason to wait. All the people that said 4 years ago that I'm going to wait, look at how much more they have to pay for something now.
Right.
If the numbers work, it makes sense. Whether you're talking about a home for your family or an investment property.
Right.
The investment property cash flows and kicks you off some money every month, it works. if you can afford the mortgage payment, and it's typically less when you add in the tax benefits of homeownership than what you were paying in rent somewhere else,
Right.
it makes sense.
Makes
And you
sense.
need a place for your family to live. And
Right.
it's rewarding having the pride of ownership and fixing it up and doing those projects with your spouse or kids.
Exactly. I go back because I bought my house, just got married, was getting into this business, income's fluctuating like crazy. Like my wife's an RN, she wasn't working the full shifts yet. She was part time, but like our house payment was like $2,200, and we're freaking out like how are we gonna afford this $2,200 payment?
Yeah.
We get into it, then it becomes comfortable, and then we refinance, and now it's a $1,500 a month payment.
Mhm.
But then again too, like we bought, that was when FHA mortgage insurance premium was 1.35.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's 0.8, 0.85. So that helps too. But then we also now have almost $150,000 in equity in our property.
Yeah.
Like at the time, yeah, it was a little stressful in getting there, but ultimately you build towards this and things become more comfortable and you're able to make that payment and even refinance the lower payment.
Yeah.
So,
there's never a good time to buy.
No.
You're always going to be stressful over
Yeah.
it. It's never going to be a stress-free experience because as things change, as you get older, you expect and you want a different standard.
Right.
When you're 20 years old and you wake up and you're stressed about $2,500 a month in bills.
Yep.
It's the same thing as when you're 40 and you wake up and you're stressed about $15,000-$20,000 a month in bills, right? Like it's the same problem.
Everything is relative.
Somehow
to
you
the
figure
time.
it out.
Right. And I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of people is just like, hey, I'm still on the fence. I don't know like what I should do. I mean, there's awesome down payment assistance programs. We talk about them all the time here. Like we just closed one today. It was ridiculous. The guy got in for less than $1,000
Mm-hmm.
on a $420,000 home. Like you're not going to find that everywhere, but it is available.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing is like get in the game. Now's the time to do so. So.
Yeah. Don't be too proud to buy in a neighborhood that's not your ideal neighborhood.
Right.
It's always short term.
Right.
Life is always changing. You're always growing. And if you didn't buy that $200,000 house in neighborhood X that you ended up selling for $400,000, you would have never been comfortable buying the $450,000 house in the ideal neighborhood that you want to live in. It's just a stepping stone.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. I'm glad we touched on that too. So anyway, Michael, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you for talking and a lot about investing because that's something that we get asked questions all the time about is now a good time to invest? In my opinion, it's always a good time to invest. You just got to make sure that you get in the game.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you coming on and thank you so much.
Good talking to you.
All right. Thank you, sir.